and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 4, Episode 4, White Hole, with the help of my guest, Aubergine Purple. Hi again, we were just speaking a minute ago.
Hello.
Hello. Right, okay, White Hole, a very good episode, and of course a very Holly-centric episode. But before we get into Holly, we should probably start with where the episode starts, which is, of course, Talkie Toaster.
My girlfriend has this idea that for all the fandom hate that Talkie gets as a character, it's not justified because he's just doing his job. He's programmed to toast, and that's all he's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, he says in the earlier version, back in Series 1, I think, says, "I toast, therefore I am."
Exactly. And so, yeah, she's just like, Talkie Toaster did nothing wrong, and if you say otherwise, you have a problem. And she's not wrong. He is legitimately programmed to toast, but it's interesting.
I wouldn't say I hate Talkie as a character, but if I had a Talkie Toaster, it would drive me unbend.
I have seen people, say, typically like on the subreddit, that they absolutely hate Talkie as a character. They love the interactions with, but just like, if it existed, they wouldn't buy one.
Obviously, fair enough. He is, after all, manufactured very amusingly by Crapola Inc.
Yeah, that was a good joke. Nice visual joke right there, because they don't have to say anything. You just see the crapola, and you're like, yep, there we go.
Of course, yes, that is a very neat little on screen joke. Yeah, so Talkie. It is a very good concept, and yes, your girlfriend does have a point that technically Talkie isn't doing anything wrong; he's just doing what he's programmed to do. Although there is kind of suggestion that he's kind of faulty, and they're not meant to be that obsessed with bread. But he is an AI; it's not technically his fault. But unfortunately, none of that stops him being incredibly irritating.
And, we do see him, this episode kind of hints at a potential to be more than just a bread and bread byproduct focused device, because he's got an AI. But then, in the book, Better Than Life, he actually does expand his knowledge base, but still comes back to, by the way, would you like some toast?
Yeah, it's true. He does kind of have the potential a little bit. He does manage later on to talk to Genius Holly and about things other than toast briefly. So he is technically capable of talking about things other than toast. He just doesn't want to.
Correct. And they missed an opportunity in the episode of having him be a vessel of communication between the crew and Holly after that whole conversation that he'd been having with Holly. Because they did that in the books, and it was kind of nice because then, more scenes with Talkie Toaster. But at the moment, currently Holly is very senile.
Yeah, it would have been funny, but the thing is, it's kind of how well could you trust him not to filter everything through the mention of toast, but it could definitely been funny. What better example, of the fact how irritating this appliance is, that, Dave Lister, of all people, completely lost it and smashed it with a hammer. Come on.
After we've established he's just he's a moral, upstanding guy who just has some questionable history.
Yeah, I mean, this is true, you know.
He's just like, no, I beat it. Yeah, of course you beat me. It was toaster side.
First degree toastified. I do love that line.
That is a good line.
And the way we get, I think as Craig says in the commentary, Baker's Gazette, we don't want any, it goes for every imaginable variant on bread, and then, so you were waffle man.
Exactly why I just said, I said bread. It should have been wheat and wheat byproducts to make the nice Welcome to Night Vale reference.
Yeah. He should probably.
But yeah, that's pretty much Talkie's whole thing: wheat and wheat byproducts.
They should probably
put that on the box.
Should probably be more, being more clever and said something like, we literally don't want you to toast anything whatsoever, ever. But even that wouldn't have worked because, he would have found some way to get around it.
I toast, therefore I am.
Exactly, yes. Oh, I do like the way it's filmed. The way we literally see Lister and Crichton from Talkie's POV. It's just an amusing little thing, which of course they bring back when Talkie returns way later in the show in Mechocracy. We get the same shot, of Lister.
Yeah. They at least, for all the inconsistencies the series has, sometimes it's very interesting to see what things they choose to keep consistent.
Although, of course, as you are probably aware, David Ross, the actor, didn't originally play Talkie. Back in series 1, he was played by John Lenihan, and
Talkie also looked different too.
Yeah, and he actually had a slightly different personality. I remember reading this. In series 1. In series 1, he's kind of whiny, please, and whereas in series 4, he's much chirpier.
How doodly do? Yeah, that's chirpier.
Yeah. Again, that completely makes sense because Crichton has literally rebuilt him. The way Crichton was rebuilt by Lister,
yes, but Lister references the how doodly do before we hear it.
Yeah, now you mention it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it could be that, and this is just to explain this inconsistency, it could be that Talkie was like that when Lister first got him, but Lister not responding to him, not letting him do his job. Talkie got to be the whiny version we know originally, but then after Crichton rebuilds him, he's kind of restarted almost, and so he's chirpy again because, you put me back together.
I guess that would explain it. Yeah, you could argue, that sort of Crichton restored Talkie to kind of his original form, etc. I mean that would kind of make sense. Yeah. Obviously, I know that the reason for the differences, is because different toasters, different actors, different writing. But it's fun to come up with in-universe explanations. It just makes it so much more fun.
Exactly.
I'm going to sort of tackle the kind of elephant in the room here, which is, I love David Ross. I found him. He was great as Crichton, and he's great as Talkie here, and I'm really glad that he gets to come back in Mechocracy as well.
That was nice, yes.
Yeah, I have to admit, it does kind of stick in my throat that even David Ross got to come back in the Dave era, but Hattie didn't. Come on. At some stage, it just kind of start to look like it's personal against Hattie. I hate to say it.
No, it should be said. While it was nice seeing Norman come back as Holly, especially in Time Skip, and then again in The Promised Land. If they do anything else, it would really be beneficial to them for the fans to bring back Hattie. We want to see her again. She's beloved at conventions, and it would behoove them to bring back Hattie because she deserves it.
Really, really, really would. And the thing is, they have the perfect the perfect opportunity to do so. I mean, given the nature of Holly, that Holly can flip-flop between Norman and Hattie, and if the reason for not bringing her back is the fact that they consider Norman, I mean, it makes me angry to think of it, but the fact that they consider Norman the real Holly, or whatever the heck, they could even get around that by having a special where they go back to the parallel universe, and she could play Hilly. I mean, why the hell not?
Yeah. And we'd also be able to see what's up with Deb, Arlene, and the twins.
Yeah, I mean...
Which would also be a great callback.
I mean, honestly, this is staring Doug in the face as his next special. I mean, of course, as I say that, I am obviously aware that at the moment nobody's making any Red Dwarf because there is an ongoing legal dispute between Doug and Grant Naylor Productions. I mean, so it is sadly possible that we may never get any Red Dwarf again, but if we do get more Red Dwarf, then really I think that should be their go-to, especially in the parallel universe.
I mean, even if we can't get another filmed what have you, and they say go to a radio drama for whatever reason, still would be able to bring back Hattie.
There is no earthly reason why not, because, I mean, by the very nature of Holly's character, Holly has canonically switched between Norman and Hattie, and Holly is a computer, so, I mean, why the hell not,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to, get into the legal dramas because that's not relevant to the episode, and we only got so much time. So,
correct.
Yeah. Moving on to Hattie. Obviously, this is Hattie's big episode. It's her version of Queeg. And it's the first time we see her in this episode. Is if you've watched the previous episode, it's a bit of a shock, because we go straight from Justice, where she seems quite with it and comes up with a decent plan for the crew to work out what to do with the pod, which may or may not be a stimulant. And in the next episode, she's counting by banging her head on the screen.
Yeah, and sure, I know they explain it through, this is an ion storm, but the whole AI senility thing also kind of is like they've already proven that Holly can be off it for most of the time and then actually hit it right on the head sometimes. Like I said in the last episode, there's the phrase, a broken clock is still right twice a day. So,
Mm-hmm.
It could also just be that, even though they gave an explanation why she's a little worse than usual, that's still hanging over their head, It's an established thing that Holly is generally not all there.
Yeah, and of course, I guess to be fair, probably playing it up somewhat. So that there'll be more of a contrast with the genius IQ Holly that we meet later in the episode, which
definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, we actually in the very next episode, in Dimension Jump, we see a Rimmer who seems even more sort of nerdy and irritating than usual, and that is obviously to make more of a contrast with Ace. So I mean, it's a thing that they do, sort of exaggerate what a character's bad qualities or what's wrong with a character, to contrast with the improved. Dare I say improved version, better version? I mean that more with regard to Genius IQ Holly that we meet later in the episode. So I mean,
it's a common narrative tool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I wasn't trying to say that I think Ace is better than Rimmer or anything. I was more referring to Holly and Genius IQ Holly.
Right.
But personally, I like Rimmer and I like Ace, and I think it's perfectly possible to like both. I mean, it's kind of odd the way some people who really, really, really like Rimmer don't like Ace, and even actively hate Ace. And I'm like, you do realise that Ace is Rimmer, don't you? I mean, it's
yeah.
odd.
I mean, I like them both. Just generally different reasons, but there's no reason to necessarily hate an alternate version of someone because they all are ultimately the same person. But this case we have Holly where she's not really a different AI. She's just had her IQ increased exponentially.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, the IQ increase happens, and instead of just having her hair down and relax, it's slicked back and in a tight bun that we can't even see.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting contrast. I mean, with Holly before, with Queeg, he completely changed his face entirely. And voice and everything to pretend for this joke that he was playing on everyone. But this time, as Holly's just like, no, I'm going to look the part of being exceptionally smart.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be fair, I mean the reason they wrote this episode, it was to sort of give Hattie the spotlight, which she wasn't really getting. So I guess having a different actor play Genius IQ Holly would have been completely self-defeating. So I do get that. But yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like Genius IQ Holly. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want her around all the time because for the simple reason that it would be difficult to have a conflict or problems, with Genius IQ around, because she could probably have got, if she'd had more time, she could probably have gotten back to Earth or whatever, But I like Genius IQ Holly because it's just a change, from regular Holly, and dare I say, I kind of like how impatient and sarcastic she is.
That is a fun part of her character, but it's also a sign of why it's good she doesn't hang around.
Yeah.
The genius version, because the joke and a lot of the jokes is she's exceptionally smart and everyone else just can't even try to catch up to her. Those kind of jokes would get tired really fast.
Basically, having that kind of character around all the time would kind of kill the drama. It would spoil a lot of plots. I mean, you could, to be fair, you could say exactly the same thing about Ace. You wouldn't want Ace around all the time either. For that.
Exactly.
Continuing the sort of comparison with Queeg, I mean, how to put this? I mean, both Queeg and White Hole, they're very good episodes, quality episodes. In my opinion, they're also obviously very different because obviously, Queeg is entirely orchestrated by Norman's Holly. He's in control from right from the very beginning and right to the very end. Whereas in Holly, this is something which in White Hole is something which happens to Hattie's version of Holly. She's briefly in control when her genius, when she has a genius IQ, but she's not sort of driving the entire plot of the episode in the way which Norman's Holly is. And obviously,
which kind of creates this whole her being a genius, not being her fault, and the fact that severely reduces her lifespan now, her runtime now, makes the comedy of it happening at all a little different than Norman's Holly's just playing a joke because he's feeling unappreciated, as well as he just wants to play a joke on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that also definitely changes the atmosphere of the overall situation.
It does. I mean, obviously, to be fair, you wouldn't want, White Hole to be sort of Queeg too, because you don't want exactly the same plot. And I do think, they did a good job, of writing a completely different episode to showcase Hattie's version of Holly as opposed to Norman's. There really aren't any similarities between the two episodes, apart from the fact that they centre the different versions of Holly.
Yeah, which is nice. It's semi-thematic, but also absolutely different.
Exactly. I agree. To say, I mean, well, this is leaping ahead a tad, but it always struck me as a bit odd that she provides the idea to play pool with planets, then Lister, says the coordinates her coordinates are wrong, I mean, just kind of seems unlikely that with an IQ of 12,000 that she would have got it wrong. I mean, did Lister just sort of pull off an amazing trick shot because he happens to be that good at pool and was very lucky? It's just kind of odd.
It's odd, but it also does tie into there's a difference between having knowledge and having experience using that knowledge. And Holly suddenly having her IQ exponentially increased doesn't mean she has the experience of using that knowledge. Whereas Lister has this experience with some of the knowledge of what she's doing and recognizes there's just a tiny bit missing, that if you don't understand how something like pool works and how certain angles, sometimes you need to make something spin to make it actually go the distance, for instance, the pool cues and everything. Otherwise, you're going to fail. And just doing the numbers doesn't mean that the numbers are reflective of actual outcome.
And
that's kind of what I see with it,
that is a good explanation. I mean, because knowledge as opposed to experience. That is a good way of putting it.
But it's still also a shot in the dark. Like, there was also the absolute comedy of, Rimmer is 100% trusting Holly because Holly does have this IQ and is recognizing, well, I don't know this, I can't say that I know this better, so I'm going to trust the person who says that they know what they're doing. And Kat is solely against Rimmer because it's Rimmer and his fashion
exactly.
sense.
Yeah, I mean,
And Crichton is solely against Rimmer because I'm programmed to follow the human, not a hologram. And it is only because of that they even go farther, and Lister even does play pool with planets, because nobody wants to back Rimmer.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we have Robin.
And it could have ended badly. Rimmer could have been right in trusting Holly. Holly could have been correct. But the comedy ends up being that no, Rimmer was wrong, and Lister had the experience, and Lister was right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have Rob Lecter here, but I mean, I brought it up. So while we're talking about this bit, it is kind of interesting. Well, I mean, a little bit further earlier on in the episode, and when we got the issue of Rimmer point blank refusing to be shut off to save Lister and Kat. I mean, of course, that's not surprising, but technically, Lister could have insisted, because we find out here that as far as Crichton is concerned, a living human outranks a hologram, But of course, Lister would never do that because Lister is Lister, he's far too nice to do that. But I mean, technically,
but he also sees Rimmer as still being human, and would view turning him off, unless in an absolute dire situation, which he didn't see that as a dire situation just yet.
I mean, it could have become
Lister
a dire situation.
Right, but Lister's shown that he doesn't want to turn Rimmer off because he views that as killing Rimmer, which does speak volumes to his characterization in general. But we also, it's sometimes forgotten that it's established that holograms, like Rimmer, he's only operating because Lister needs a companion. But if Lister were to die, he's just going to get shut off, and there's no reason for him to be on.
Yeah.
And that gets explored in fanfic all the time.
Of course, yeah.
But it's, an unsaid thing in this episode.
I mean, I did wonder actually, having recently, done the podcast with, whether in this conversation, somewhere in the back of Lister's mind is what happened in Marooned, when obviously they were in a desperate situation, and maybe he still has some residual guilt about what he ended up doing to Rimmer, and that's why he doesn't push it. I mean,
yeah,
it could be,
Also, in this same situation, started off the second time, and the second and last time we hear of Rimmer directives. The first time was in Polymorph, but this is the second time we hear a Rimmer directive. The first time didn't get a number. This time did. And then they dropped it. And I really think that would have been a fun thing to keep bringing up, especially as Rimmer got more into talking about Space Corps directives, which has, starting to become a thing in the series. It would have been fun if they kept Rimmer directives as a thing.
Because Crichton obviously was always saying, Space Corps directive. No, you're thinking Space Corps directive. Which was funny in itself, but it could also be funny, if Rimmer then revealed his complete, willingness to override whatever Space Corps directive it was if he doesn't like what that Space Corps directive says. Of course, actually, if he'd done that, then the plot of Quarantine wouldn't really work, because the whole point of Quarantine was that he was sticking rigidly to the Space Corps directives. I guess you can look at it either way.
Another thing I noticed about this episode is it starts, or at least this is the first time I've noticed this joke starting between the Cat and Crichton, where Cat will suggest something, and then Crichton will list, giving one or two reasons why and how that idea isn't possible.
Yes.
And
yeah.
One of the times, the second reason was the exact same as the first. This time, it wasn't, but it's like this joke actually comes up multiple times in future series as well, and it's just interesting that this is personally in my watching the series the first time I think it shows up.
Yeah, I think it probably is. Yes, I mean it is a neat little joke, and it's good. They Cass and Crichton some sort of one-on-one interaction, albeit it's very brief usually, but it's just nice to see.
Another thing that I found interesting is the interactions between Genius Holly and Rimmer to Genius Holly and Taki.
Yeah, so I was going to go back to of course we did leap ahead somewhat. Well, I did by bringing it up, but yeah, to the interactions between Genius IQ Holly and Talkie, which are very good, because it's odd. I mean, she's actually almost more polite to Talkie than she is to Rimmer. To be fair, I mean, when she's talking to Rimmer, she is aware that she has running time left in minutes, whereas when she's talking to Talkie, she doesn't know that. So obviously there's a much increased urgency.
But they're also similar in the books. I mean, there isn't the scene in the books between Holly trying to talk to Rimmer. It's the scene with her talking to Taki, and they actually talk a lot more in the book. And it helps in the plot later on and shows that Taki can talk about more than wheat and wheat byproducts. But it's nice that they have this little discussion. Her clearly getting annoyed, but showing Taki is, not just a toaster, like Crichton wanted to prove. But none of them are there to see it. I think that's the better comedy of the scene, is none of them are there to see Taki being anything but a toaster.
True, yeah, now you mention it, I mean, that's kind of a shame, but of course, obviously, if anybody else was there, then Holly would be talking to them, because she's going to have a less toast-focused conversation. but
Correct.
I really, really enjoyed Genius IQ Holly because, I mean, it's just, so nice to see Hattie given more to do. I mean, of course, unfortunately, but the plot necessitates her being turned off. I mean, at least she does come back and get the conversation with Rimmer, and she does provide the solution, the playing pool with Planet solution. But well, I was going to say that, but I mean, I was going to say it's a shame that she has to be off screen for her centric episode, but come to it, I guess you could say, to be fair, that Norman is also off screen for a lot of Queeg, because Queeg replaces him, so to speak. But I mean, I don't know, maybe
narratively it's still Holly in that one. We learn later, so in a sense Holly as a character is technically still there.
That is true, of course, yes.
So yeah.
So just play by a different actor, but yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of typifies the different treatment between Norman and Hattie, frankly. I mean, and too much, because I mean, I enjoy both actors a lot, and I mean, and I enjoy both male Holly and female Holly, and they both contribute a heck of a lot to the show, but they do so in different ways, because Norman's Holly, at least in series 1 and 2, was a real sort of major character, and then Hattie unfortunately came on just as Crichton became a major character and kind of stole Holly's limelight. But to give Hattie a lot of well-deserved credit, she did make the absolute most of what she did. She did get, I mean, you always see her acting, even in the background, when she doesn't have any lines. For instance, she gives a good disgusted look, when Lista's head bursts in justice, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And there's also Cat coming out into the main part, and he's covered in the stuff. You can see her looking down with this look of, I am so sorry for you, and you can tell she's empathetic to Kat's plight, because that is disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, also, I do want to say, I'm not sure if it's the, just the difference in the different approach that Hattie Hayward took to playing the character as opposed to Norman Lovett, but Hattie's Holly does come across a lot more empathetic than Norman's Holly a lot of the time, to be honest. You think she cares more about the characters, or I mean, I don't know if that's just me projecting, but that's kind of the impression she gives.
I get the impression too, and it's right. It's something that also comes out a bit when Norman returns. He seems to also then be a bit more empathetic to everyone's situations and circumstances, especially because he comes back in series 8 and they're in jail. So I mean, it kind of was like an evolution of the character that happened because we got Hattie.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the thought, that when Norman came back in 8, somehow Hattie's the way Hattie played the role kind of subconsciously influenced either the performance or the character, because I mean that's good. I mean, obviously it makes sense because it is all supposed to be the same character, so it would make sense, Yeah, I mean,
and which is why it's such a thing with the Promised Land, and they get Holly operating again, but Holly has no empathy because the memory banks haven't been initialized or whatever, and this Holly doesn't even remember who they are. And so you have that stark contrast, but then when what happens later does happen, and immediately Holly's just like, oh damn, this is not good.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Although having said that, although it's quite jarring to see Norman do that, it would be even more jarring if it had been Hattie's version, to be honest.
Yeah, that would have honestly been
quite.
Because I feel like her face is a lot more expressive than Norman's.
I mean,
so, he's able to play off that deadpan face really well. I think it would have been very jarring to see Hattie be deadpan.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it is, obviously, different actors, different approaches to the role, different writing. But I mean, I definitely agree. That Hattie is. I'll put this. So I think Hattie is better at sort of dramatic acting than Norman. I mean, Norman is more about the comedy. I mean, whereas Hattie could definitely do the comedy, but she does kind of do a sort of more straightforward dramatic acting as well. I mean, for instance,
and you especially see that when she, finally realizes, oh my God, I know everything. I'm a super genius now. Oh my God, the acting is much more than we've seen her do before, and not just because her head is literally no longer on a screen for that scene.
Yeah, it's nice that they sort of have her leap out the screen, as though her new IQ can no longer be contained within a screen. It's a nice visual touch.
Yes, I quite like that too. And I think it's also something they mention in the book when describing the scene with her having her IQ increased. Although, granted, in the book, Holly never changes gender.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I think to be fair, the book version of White Hole was actually written first, and when Rob and Doug, was searching around for episode ideas, they decided to adapt White Hole. So I mean, I guess that's
well. I mean, because they got multiple episodes out of that actually, because you had a little bit of Polymorph as well as Backwards and Marooned, all kind of in the same, like, as the scene played out to deal with the whole, what they came up with White Hole eventually. It had elements from all those stories afterwards, and all those stories were written after Better Than Life was written, so that makes sense.
I was always under the impression, that the novels, in most cases, they adapted episodes which had already aired. But in the case of White Hole, it was the other way around. The book version existed first, and then they adapted it for TV. I mean, I wouldn't be 100% on that, but I think it's only White Hole that was actually adapted from a book rather than vice versa.
Okay.
But they definitely did get a lot of worth out of sort of using the TV series to expand upon the book. I mean, obviously, if I am wrong here, people, listeners, give me feedback. But I was always under the impression that it was only White Hole that was adapted from a book rather than the other way around. Anyway, anyway, let me see. I think we're at almost 40 minutes. So I guess we should probably address the rest of the episode, because there are sections we haven't mentioned.
So there's the one thing that got me. There's the scene brings back the "what is it" joke.
Yes, I was about to. Yeah,
but it's a very literal way they did the scene to express. I mean, we already went through the whole Rimmer and Crichton in the hallway, and one side of the hall was faster than the other side was slower than. But this scene really exemplifies the fact that time is not in lateral order. It's not happening chronologically. And I think it got across much better the later way that they told Holly about how time is. Oh, now I can't remember how Rimmer put it.
The White Hole is sort of spooning time back into the universe.
Yeah. So it really that scene showed it a lot more than the first time they tried to in the episode, with just two of them, by having all four of them there experiencing this conversation in a mismatched order.
And of course, having Kat say, "What is it?" First popped up in Stasis Leak in a different context, but basically the same thing. What the hell is going on here, And it's nice the way that they repurposed having Kat saying, "What is it?" because that is fundamentally funny, for character-based reasons. But they built a totally different scene around it. It's neat.
Granted, I still don't think he knew. I still think, like, as with every situation before and after, he asks what is it, and he still doesn't know what it is, but he pretends he does now because he's just like, let's move on, guys. If I'm not gonna get it, let's just go anyway.
Moving swiftly on. That is fun. That's funny. I mean, I do like. I mean, it is very sort of cleverly filmed. I mean, apparently, I don't know if this is true, but apparently the actors did actually sort of literally repeat themselves rather than what they'd already filmed just being looped. So I mean, if they managed to repeat themselves exactly, then it's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And it probably was one hell of a scene to film because it's very easy if you're not just splicing that together and doing the editing of that scene, having done it straight as a conversation, and you actively are being the ones to screw up the order the conversation's going in. That can easily screw up as you go.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of. I think it was Ed Byron in one of the documentaries saying that Paul Jackson had this thing where they had to go through the entire script in rehearsals, and if they made a mistake, if anyone made a mistake, it was right back to the beginning, which he said promoted hatred for fellow actors.
Yeah, that would do that.
It just always makes me giggle the way he put that. And the thing is, from this particular scene, the "So What Is It" scene, I don't think there are a lot of Smeg-ups, but there is a different scene in this episode where Kat is saying to Lister, "Look, just relax, Stan and Ollie will be back with supplies soon." In Smeg-up, Stanley says that about 10 times before he gets it right. Poor Craig is sweating on an exercise bike, so that must have been a somewhat bad-tempered shoot.
Oh yeah, that. It's just an interesting premise to even film, to be honest. Most places would film the conversation straight and then do the editing. But it probably got more laughs as it went from being done out of order.
To be fair, I'm only going by what I think the actors said in their commentary. They may not be accurate. It is possible that maybe they just filmed it once and then looped it. But I don't know.
I have no idea. I haven't yet seen it with the commentary.
Of course, you'll be seeing that shortly. But yeah, I mean, it was more classically Red Dwarf to be that they would insist that they did the whole thing live. Frankly.
Yeah. And mentioned earlier. The setup that Lister was going to fail playing pool with planets. I think that's an interesting time of the episode to even set that up. I mean, because we've already gotten this far and so much has already happened that realistically, as you're watching it, it's set up in such a way that it's not going to fail. There's really no way at that time, that far into the episode, and it not being the last episode of the series, that Lister could conceivably fail being right that Holly is wrong.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there is no way that he could have failed. I mean, unless, of course, we'd known in advance that it was a 2-part episode or something, but I mean, of course, 2-part episode...
Which we would have,
Exactly, yeah.
So being that it's a single episode and not a two-parter, you go in it knowing. I remember feeling that way the first time I watched it, being like, you're trying to make me feel like he's going to fail, but we're too far in. He's not failing. There's no way, unless you've got some really good Deus Ex Machina coming up. I don't see him failing.
Exactly. He has to succeed, Oh, and I do like the way they film him in black and white. I mean, obviously the idea is supposed to be that he's mentally going back to the Aubergine Farms. It's just a nice little touch. So we do eventually see the Aubergine Farms in a Roborus, and it's very sort of kind of like a space age version of a pub, and frankly it doesn't really look like the kind of place that I would imagine Lister hanging out in, but maybe that's just me.
Well, I mean, it is also where he was found as a baby, and he was told that at some point, apparently. So he may feel a connection to that specific pub for that reason, because it's as close to knowing where he comes from growing up as he's ever going to get.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point.
At least that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a good point. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the fact that they decided to go for a very futuristic space age kind of pub. But I mean, given that the one we saw in time slides was a very sort of traditional kind of British pub, that I could imagine walking into, and so was the pub in Backwards. It's kind of an interesting choice, but of course in Series 7 Doug was doing a lot of experimenting, and some of it was successful, some of it less so. It's good that he was experimenting. Red Dwarf has always been a show, which isn't afraid to sort of change and shake things up.
Which is good, because, shaking things up is kind of what regularly happens in Red Dwarf. It's known for its inconsistency.
Yeah.
And if you're not afraid to shake things up and have inconsistencies, then,
Yeah, I mean...
You're not limited.
Exactly. To be fair, the majority of the time when they decide to do a shake-up, it works, It didn't work in Series 8, and you can kind of argue about Series 7, but most of the rest of the time it did work, when they did it, for instance, when they brought in Crichton and Hattie's Holly for Series 3, that obviously worked very well indeed.
Yeah.
And they also, when they came back with Series 10, Trojan was a very strong way to return. So again, deciding to go back to the sort of four men sort of stuck together as opposed to a more expanded crew. That was shaking the show up, and again it was a good decision.
Oh yeah. I think the only thing we haven't covered is the glaring inconsistency to another episode here.
Oh yes.
That
Do you mean
Whitehall? The fact that Lister remembers in Demons and Angels.
Yes,
about having done this, and it came to me watching this last night that the only reason I can think of that he could possibly remember it is because he was the only one who was drunk. His mind wasn't in a natural state, so somehow through all the timey-wimey stuff he remembers having done this, but it didn't sound like he remembered why he played pool with planets, just that he did.
That is a nice little way of sort of fananizing it away, and I like it. Of course, obviously, the real explanation is that Rob and Doug do not care about continuity, but it's much more fun to make up explanations.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, I kind of don't mind Rob and Doug's attitude to continuity because they've always been so cheerfully unashamed about it. We don't give a fuck about continuity. Who cares? So
yeah.
You've got. I kind of respect that. And also it does give the fans a lot of fun. Making up explanations.
Yeah. I think they know that. I think it's given how many things have come out since the days of the original Star Trek series, and the way that fandom has existed since then, and the fan creations that have come from it, and people, even though it didn't seem like it was publicly known by a lot of people, it has come out through the internet that it was a lot more known about these fan creations existing than was initially recognized. So in a way, you could almost wonder if Doug and Rob did that intentionally, knowing that the fans could do whatever they wanted, and they could do whatever they wanted with the series, and everyone be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that is the case. I mean, I don't know exactly when they kind of made this subconscious decision, but there is, in the Body Snatcher collection, there is a short documentary about the remastered episodes, which were not popular at all with the sort of mainstream fan base at the time. And Doug says, well, on the upside, they did have a wonderful time tearing them apart, and criticising them, so it wasn't a complete waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Doug understands, that fans, or at least some fans, I mean, obviously casual fans who just watch it on the TV probably wouldn't care, but more keener fans enjoy, sort of coming up with explanations for things. And sometimes they might enjoy, sort of slagging off an episode if they think it's a bad episode, or alternatively they might enjoy coming up with an explanation for a plot hole or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, I think. Oh yes, of course. We should probably, give a shout out to the way Crichton decides to end this episode by telling Mo exactly what he thinks of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you, it's comedic that they end that way, but it could have just been just as comedic to have ended in a way in which they think their timeline's going to be eliminated and then it isn't. And I think I liked that they ended it on I'm just going to assume this timeline's going to be destroyed and I'm just going to lay it all on you. I think that comedy fits more in line with Red Dwarf than the having him get it all out and then they find out, oh wait, this timeline's not being destroyed. Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah. Admittedly, it would have been amusing if we'd had a scene at the end, or even a scene in a subsequent episode, where it indicates that actually I very much do remember you insulting me, Crichton. But I mean, it's not necessary. It's a snappier way to end it if Crichton just insults him and then credits. I do enjoy the way we see in the very last shot, Lister nodding.
Oh yeah. I mean, considering the beginning of this series, or was it series 3? Oh no, this is the series that Crichton became a regular. Yes. Considering the beginning, the opening scene of this series was Lister trying to teach Crichton how to lie, as well as insult Rimmer. So Lister nodding in the background kind of harkens back to that, I'm approving, you're breaking your programming sort of thing.
Yes, I did my job well. You're coming along really, really, really nicely. I mean, he must be thinking to himself, hooray, it worked. I mean, of course, doesn't always work. Crichton does have sort of, episodes of sort of backsliding, but I mean, generally speaking, it was at least partly successful.
Yeah.
Okay, we have more or less come to the end of what to say about this episode, but I think I do want to before just to reiterate. I know we've already discussed it, but I'm just going to say, that Hattie Hayridge is my favourite version of Holly, and she has been badly underused, and I really, really, really hope that we get to see her one more time.
I absolutely, completely agree. I want to see more Hattie, and I'm still disappointed that we haven't had her come back. So, Doug, if you're watching this and you guys make more, just saying.
Yeah. So, and also, Rob, since you have made no.
Oh yeah,
My Warmer Dwarf. That applies to you as well.
Oh yeah, both of you guys. Just so you know, we want more Hattie.
Yeah, we are joking to be clear. I mean, I do not imagine that either of them would listen to this, but just in case.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We should probably start wrapping up. But I mean, I do want before you go, your scores out of 10, both for overall and for slashiness.
So for slashiness, there's like pretty much nothing in this that I personally could make slashy without making some wild leaps. So it gets a 2.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest.
I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And anything slashy that you would do in this episode is definitely going to be between scenes type of stuff. Rimmer and Lister really do not have basically any interactions except arguing about whether or not to trust Holly's math.
You are absolutely right, to be honest. I mean, I think I'm going to give it 3 out of 10 for slashiness, but that is solely because, I find most Red Dwarf episodes that contain both Lister and Rimmer to be slashy, so yeah. I mean, obviously this is very much a Holly episode, with a supporting role by Talkie Toaster.
Yeah.
And so, what would you give it overall out of 10?
Overall, I think this episode definitely gets an 8 for me. In part because this is a Hattie episode. It's also just, it's got a lot of elements and it flows really well.
But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree, and it so happens that I have also put down 8 here. It's a very solid quality episode. I mean, even leaving aside the fact that it's Hattie's big episode, it's just a really good episode which I enjoy watching. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Okay, so that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologamet for technical help, and also thank you to my returning guest, Aubergine Purple. It's been a pleasure.
It's been fun, yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for coming back and giving your thoughts. Okay.
Of course.
Okay. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on Tumblr or Discord, the post where I've linked this episode, or you can email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. And I'm just going to add something now for the benefit of anyone listening to this episode who didn't listen to the previous one and who isn't on Tumblr or Discord. This is about Buzzsprout. You may have noticed some episodes disappearing from Buzzsprout, but don't panic. We are in the process of re-uploading all our episodes to our new YouTube channel. Nothing has been lost. Everything will eventually be archived on that channel. Currently, Series 1 is on there, and the rest will follow soon. So if you want to listen to those episodes again, just search for Smeg and the Femmes on YouTube. And the next episode we'll be covering is the all-time classic Dimension Jump. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, goodbye.